How am I supposed to get out of debt? I can't rap no more. I just murdered the alphabet. This is Mark Bell from SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West, answering more questions today for the Power Project. If you're watching the Power Project, congratulations, because you're watching the worldwide leader in strength, and it also means that you have no life. If you're not tuned into the Power Project, it also means that you have no life. We have 10,000 subscribers. We are now 10,000 strong with the Power Project Army, which is brought to you by HowMuchYouBench.net, The Slingshot, and the only strength magazine in the world, The Power Magazine. Now that I got all that stuff out of the way, let's get down to bees nass. We have a question from Shane Duplessis off of Power Project Army at yahoo.com email address, which is where you're supposed to try to reach me when you have questions. The question is how to peak for a contest. He says he's a newer lifter. Now, it's a kind of a complicated question because newer doesn't necessarily mean that you're weak. So that's a factor. And also whether you're geared or not geared. So I'll explain a little bit in all aspects here. Let's just start out by saying raw. Let's say that you're a raw lifter. R, capital R, capital A, capital A, capital W, and then about 3 exclamation points would be sufficient to make sure everybody knows that you're raw. But even though you're raw, you're not totally raw. You're probably wearing knee wraps and a belt and a bunch of other stuff. Whatever. Anyway. If you're a raw lifter, I would recommend that you're probably going to take nearly 2 weeks off from your heaviest lift. However, if you are a newer lifter, as you mentioned you are, I would take your heaviest lift about 1 week before the meet, or take like your opening attempt about 1 week before the meet. Somewhere in that range, 95% of your opener or your actual opening attempt that you would like to hit in the contest. Now, also keep in mind the old school way, the old school train of thought, which is the right train of thought, which is a great way for you to try to practice, especially being a newer lifter, is you want to go in there, you want to be successful, you want to make lifts, and you want to build confidence, you want to show people that you know how to lift. So, your first attempt is normally something that you can do for about 3 reps. Cleanly for 3 reps, not any sort of bullshit repetitions in there, no breakdown in form, something you can smoke fairly easy for 3 repetitions. That's your opener. Your second attempt would be something that you can handle multiple singles with, maybe something you can do about 3 sets of 1 with. And your last attempt, you're kind of just going for broke or trying to make the numbers work out to your advantage so it can equal X amount in your total, or you can reach a 100-pound milestone or 50-pound milestone, say you're doing 300 or 350 or whatever. That's normally the way it works. So a less experienced lifter and a weaker lifter is going to use less time off going into the contest. A more experienced lifter, the stronger you are, you're going to want to wait a little bit longer. It's not too uncommon for geared lifters to take opening attempts nearly a month out from a contest. And some guys who are experienced don't even really do any opening attempts in the gym, although you're starting to see that come back more often now. So for a geared lifter, many times a geared lifter is going to take their last attempt also about 2 weeks out. Usually, in the case of a geared lifter, they're almost always a more experienced lifter due to the fact that they probably lifted raw for a little while and then got themselves into gear at some point. So again, just to reiterate, a stronger lifter is going to need a little bit more time. That's going to be very individual though, and a weaker lifter is going to need a little less time. Women typically need less time. I'm not saying women are weaker, don't anybody punch me in the face. I'm just saying that women typically can take their openers approximately about 7 days before the contest, 10 days, 12 days, somewhere in that range, and have absolutely no trouble with their attempts in the contest. For the guys, usually 10 days, 14 days, somewhere in that range will be sufficient. Now, how do we actually prepare for this thing? How do we actually prepare for this contest? There's a bunch of different ways to do it. If you follow the conjugate system, you're almost always ready to party. If you're following the cube method, same thing. You're always ready to party. You're always ready to go. The cube method by Brandon Lilly, if you're not familiar with it, you can look it up at, you can just Google it and you'll find it. Let's see, what else we got? Okay, so how do you prepare for this contest? In my opinion, a great way to prepare for it is the way that the Lillibridge family is doing it right now. I think they're one of the more successful people out there in planning their training. Brandon Lilly is also very successful at planning his training out, and he's written an article for Power Magazine about preparing for contests, and gives you a cube cycle, which runs you right into a contest. So if you go to thepowermagazine.com and sign up for the digital subscription, you will get that article. I can't remember which issue it's in, but he wrote it. Okay, so what the Lillibridge family does is every other week they go heavy. One week they'll go heavy on a squat, the next week they'll go heavy on a deadlift, and they keep rotating that out. In between, for an inexperienced lifter, it might be wise to still brush up on your lifts that you're not doing for that current week. So if you're doing a heavy squat later in the week, if you're doing a heavy squat, you may want to do some light pulls in that same week. More experienced lifters, as the Lillibridge family is, they simply just cut all that out. It's just heavy, heavy, heavy. So it's a heavy squat one week, a heavy deadlift the next, a heavy squat one week, a heavy deadlift the next. What about the bench? They do the same thing with the bench, except for with the bench press. In the case of the bench press, they just alternate between light and heavy. They also have an assistance day where they kind of work on some of those smaller muscle groups. And over a 6-week period, all they do is they just ramp up in the amount of weight that they're using. So in week 1, they may do sets of 6. In week 2, you get what I'm saying? Week 1 or week 1 of 6, they might start out with 6 or 7 reps, all the way until they get down close to the meet, where they're going to perform, 1 or 2 reps on their last training session, which is approximately 1 week before the contest. It's very standard, very typical, I forgot to mention earlier, for powerlifters to take an entire week off of training. For myself, I usually stop on about Tuesday and I'll lift on Sunday. So it's not an entire week, but I basically shut it down about 10 to 12 days before the contest and do very light training going in. So the Lillibridge method, I think, is very good. They're kind of using old school periodization, where they're simply just starting out with a certain amount of reps. They go 6 reps, 5 reps, 4 reps, 3 reps, 2 reps, 1 rep. And the reason why I'm recommending this, and a lot of you might be shocked right now because I'm a proponent of Westside Barbell and that style of training, but this is for newer guys. I don't think newer guys need to always use bands, always need to use chains, always need to do circa max phases, and so on and so forth. I would even say that experienced guys who have experienced bands and chains and all that stuff would benefit greatly from doing a periodization style program, running into a power meet, getting into if they wear powerlifting gear, they would be putting on more powerlifting gear as the contest comes closer. And the same would be done with the raw person. If you're doing sets of 6 let me back that up. I'm talking a little fast here. If you're about 12 weeks out from a contest, maybe you're not wearing any knee wraps. Maybe you're not wearing a belt even for your training. And then maybe you're 8 weeks out from a meet. Maybe you add a belt. And maybe you're about 6 weeks out, 5 weeks out, you start to add knee wraps and wrist wraps and whatever other type of wrap that you are allowed to wear to do a raw meet. So hopefully some of this information is helping you. If you are following the conjugate system, if you are following the Westside Barbell programming, or even the cube method, I would simply just rotate in a regular lift that you're going to be asked to do on game day. I'd rotate in a regular lift that you're going to be asked to do the day of the meet, a regular bench press, no bands, no chains, no frills, no nothing, a regular squat, a regular deadlift. So rotate that into your cycle, rotate that into your training as you see fit. But also remember, when you're 6 and 8 weeks out, it's still time to build strength. It's only time to test your strength on game day itself. So don't be testing, especially the last 3 weeks going into the meet. Don't be testing yourself out so hard that you wear yourself out and you get to the meet and you fall apart and you underperform. You pull 600 in the gym and you go to the meet and you only pull 575. That is unacceptable here at the Power Project. Make sure your PRs are done. Make sure all the best shit that you ever do is done in the actual contest itself. Strength is never a weakness, and that is it from supertraining.tv.